For my Chapter 5 question, I'm going to be talking about why the sexualization of girls is not as big of an issue as people think it is. I visited the APA, or the American Psychological Association website, on the topic of the sexualization of girls, and an APA task force admitted to only being formed in response to the expression of public concern. They didn't form because they thought it was a problem. They formed because the public was giving them grief about it, and the public was thinking that this was a bad thing. Um, Basically, they're all up in arms about children being used in media and magazines and commercials and advertisements for stores. People are getting angry about all kinds of things about children being used in any form of advertisement. Virtually every form of media has proven to use the sexualization of girls or any other young children for advertising and marketing, for TV commercials, shoe store brands, malls. Pretty much everything uses some form of child advertisement and child actors and actresses to sell their product or have people visit their store. Although it may be a concern for some people, it's not illegal in any way. It's also not breaking any laws. But yet people are still getting upset over the fact that they don't think that children should be used in any form of advertisement, or girls shouldn't be on the cover of magazines to draw attention to them. What it really comes down to is it's not really a public issue as much of a parent's issue. I believe that if the parents of the children don't have an issue with it, then there shouldn't be an issue with the public either. It's not like they're being forced into this career. It's not like they're being forced into any of these advertisements. It really comes down to the parent's decision overall. If it was an issue, it should be between the parent and the child, or the parent and the company that the child is being advertised on. Um, what the APA suggested is more research on the topic. People really don't know a lot about what's going on with it, so further research would definitely help clear things up. Further education and training for the children that are being used in advertisements on the TV and on the computer. Um, and as for public awareness, I believe that it shouldn't really be a public concern unless you have a kid that is in the advertisement business. I myself wouldn't want my future daughter being advertised on TV or on the computer, but it really comes down to a family preference, and if a family doesn't have an issue with it, I don't think it should be an issue to the public either. For my Chapter 6 question, I'm going to be talking about two different senses and explaining in my own words, step by step, how stimuli in the environment are taken in and eventually processed by the brain. Alright, so for my two senses, I chose seeing and hearing. Depending on the stimuli and the environment, there are many different routes and ways that nerves can make their ways to the brain. There are pathways all over the human body that lead to different regions of the brain for certain uses and certain processes that the brain has. For example, with seeing, visual signals coming from the retina will pass down the optic nerve, and then they split apart and go to the left and right hemispheres of the brain. And they eventually find themselves in the visual cortex, which is where the brain processes the images and the shapes that you're seeing, or that you're looking at. And then for hearing, when we hear something, the ear sends electrical signals down the auditory nerve, and the signals are connected to the brainstem, and the brainstem shoots the signals up and eventually finds itself in the auditory cortex, which is where the hearing and everything that you hear is processed. For my Chapter 7 question, I'm going to be discussing how operant conditioning might be used in youth sports and coaching situations to increase cooperative behaviors. Now, for this one, I just want to start out with defining operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is the process of learning in which behavior is sensitive to or controlled by its consequences. Operant conditioning could most definitely be used in coaching situations to increase cooperative behavior and to help out with all of the team building and the learning that goes on when coaching. Some examples of operant conditioning would be learning to open a certain drawer because there are cookies in there, and you know you're going to be rewarded with the cookies if you open that drawer. Or learning not to touch a hot stove because it'll burn you. You're learning not to touch the hot stove because you don't want to get hurt. Those are some examples of operant conditioning. A coach could and should have a happy balance between reward and punishment, so operant conditioning comes into play with coaching and rewarding and punishing the teammates. A coach could start rewarding the young players with candy every time he sees good sportsmanship. So every time he sees little Jimmy being a good sport to one of his fellow teammates, you can give little Jimmy a piece of candy, and then little Jimmy will want to be good to all his sportsmates, and all the other sportsmates will see, oh, he's getting rewarded, and they'll want to do it too. So you'll just have a happy environment just because you're rewarding them with candy. Um, and it'll motivate all of them to want to do better. The coach could also punish the kids by making them run laps every time he sees someone acting mean to another teammate, or if he hears one of them swear or say a swear word, he can make them all run laps as a group, and they can, after a while, they'll all grow tired of running laps every time someone does something wrong, and it'll teach the young athletes not to be mean to each other and not to use profane language. I believe that these are some good examples of using operant conditioning while coaching a team, and I feel like if I was a coach, I would definitely use operant conditioning when teaching my teammates. For my chapter 8 question, John is walking down the street and he smells perfume in the air from a woman that passes by. Suddenly, he is struck with the memories of his ex-girlfriend who wore the same perfume. Explain why. Well, in this case, John is suffering from something called odor-evoked autobiographical memory, which is something that is caused when you smell something. It floods you with tons of memories and tons of emotions. It makes you really emotional all over an odor, a certain odor, whatever it might be. The chlorine from a pool reminding you of the summer, flowers in the garden reminding you of spring. It's kind of a shady subject right now. People are still researching what causes this to happen and why it happens. And some people say it's because smells are routed through your olfactory bulb, which is in the same region of your brain that memories are stored. And it's also the part of your brain that analyzes the smell. It's so closely connected to the amygdala and the hippocampus, which also handle memories. So since they're so connected, people have been saying that it's due to these memories being stored so close to where the smells are being processed in the brain that they tie into each other and just flood you with memories. Along with that, people have these memories due to conditioned responses. Whether you smell something, your brain automatically links it to something. If I'm smelling, if I'm at the pool and I'm smelling chlorine, my brain links the smell of chlorine and being at the pool. So the next summer when I go back and I smell the chlorine, I remember the time that I was there last summer because I've been conditioned to that. Whenever you smell something, your brain automatically links the smell to a person, place, or thing, or even a moment in time. Whether you encounter the smell again or just encounter it later in life, the link is already there and ready to cause a memory or mood change.